Welcome to this tutorial on VPET. The VPET tools include the VPET tablet tools, where you can edit a scene on set directly on a tablet, and a host application which will transfer the scene to the tablets, besides other components that I won't discuss here. In this tutorial, Unity will be used as a host. Katana is also possible as host, but will not be introduced here today. In this tutorial we will start from scratch, so we will start with downloading the sources and everything that is needed for VPET. You can find that on our GitHub repository, where you can just download it as a zip file. If you have downloaded it as a zip file, just extract it and you will find a folder containing all necessary parts of it. So, for example, we have the Katana plugin, which we will not use today, but which is also the possibility to be used as host. We have the synchronization server, which we will use, and the Unity project, which we will now open. So we start Unity. Here we are using the 2018 version, though it's also working with the 2017 version of Unity. So we navigate to the VPET folder we just downloaded and the folder containing the Unity project, and select Open. This will load the scripts and so on. As you can see, there are some errors coming up in the console, which we can mostly solve by importing the VPET package, which contains additional files like texture files for the buttons and so on. So this can also be found in the Unity folder and just be imported into the project. This will take a while, and make sure that you actually import all of the objects contained in that package. Here you can see that the Unity version which this package was created in was 2017, so we have to convert it to be compatible to 2018. But that's only necessary if you use the 2018 version of Unity. Now that the package is imported, all the error messages are gone in the console, and you can see that all necessary files are in the tree hierarchy. You can see the two scenes. The client scene is the scene from the tablet tools, and the server scene is the one that we are using today. What we now need to do is to switch to the iOS platform as target platform, because otherwise the textures will not be prepared for iOS and will therefore not be able to be transferred properly to any iOS device. So we switch to the iOS platform. Now you will see again some error messages in the console, which arise through ARKit integration. Since our client uses ARKit, it is now complaining that it is missing ARKit on that Windows machine, but you can simply disable ARKit usage in the player settings. You can navigate and we'll see use ARKit here, and you can simply delete that text and save the project again. Alright, so we switched to the iOS platform, we imported all the necessary files. Now we can go ahead and import a scene. Since we didn't want to use any prepared scene, we will just use a scene provided by Unity. We will go to the asset store and actually load some freely available Atom scenes. So we will first import a photogrammetry scene of a desert. And then we will also include the character package, or one character actually from the character package of Atom. So here's the photogrammetry package. We imported from the asset store. Make sure that you only import the scene, not the project settings. So deactivate all the project settings, because otherwise they will override the project settings of the VPET tools. Alright, we import it, and we do also import the character package, just the way we did it before, clicking on import, download and import, and deselect the project settings again. Now we have both scenes available in the project. Now we need to import it to the host. Yeah, the host scene. You can see that we have a certain hierarchy which you need to stick to. So we have a root, we have a world, and we have a folder called geometry where all the geometry should be placed in. So now you can just import the photogrammetry scene into the project geometry folder, and as well the Atom character, also just dropping it into the geo folder. So now we have both assets in the scene. We can delete the default ones, and basically now you have a scene inside the VPET host. There are now some configurations we need to make in order to properly distribute this scene to the iOS devices. As first step, you actually need to provide some kind of lower resolution geometry for your scene. So if you have your custom scene and you have a low poly version and a high poly version, you're basically good to go. You can import both the low poly version and the high poly version. If you don't have a low poly version, you can either create it in any DCC application, or you can actually use a plugin for Unity, which is called Mesh Simplify. With this, you can reduce the amount of geometry for assets by just adding another script to it directly in Unity. So you basically add a component, select Mesh Simplify, and here you have a slider where you can select the percentage of geometry that should be kept. Here I will stick to 25%, so only 25% of the original geometry will be preserved. You can then click on Compute. If you don't want to use this simplifier tool to reduce your geometry, you can also download the reduced version of the Atom scenes from the URL that is now shown. It will be computed, and now you can see there are two versions lying on top of each other, one high poly and one low poly version. So that's basically it. You have a low poly version and a high poly version of the Atom character. We will do the same thing for the photogrammetry scene, and in the end you have a low poly and a high poly version for both. Now what you need to do is to select the right layer for the assets. There is a high layer, low layer, and a mixed layer. So for all high poly meshes you select obviously LOD high, and for low poly versions LOD low. And if you have assets that should be used in both cases, you can choose LOD mixed. And you always need to change all the children as well, since the entire hierarchy should be on that layer. Sometimes when you import a scene or an asset into Unity, some of the child objects of that asset are static. This is not possible in the VPET tools because it won't allow access to the geometry which is needed to transfer the geometry to the tablets. So the best thing you can do is select a parent node, click once on static to make all the child objects static, and click again to make all objects and child objects not static anymore. Alright, so there is a special case if you want to have editable objects. So for now we will make the Adam character editable, so you can move it around in the scene in the VPET iOS tools. So what we need to do is to add another parent object on top of it. So you select an empty game object, and as child objects you can then define the low version of Adam and the high version. Make sure that you then click on the Adam parent node and select editable as a tag. This tag will actually tell the application that this object can be moved, and this will be communicated to the tablets. And you should also add the layer mixed, because you have low and high poly versions of the character, and you should definitely select only this object and not all child objects, because otherwise you will override the settings we just did a minute ago. Okay, so now we basically have the scene set up, ready to go. One last thing that we can do is to only render the high level of detail layer in that viewport of the host. So we select the camera, deselect there the low poly layer. So only the high poly layer will be rendered. All right. Now what we need to do next is we should select the server adapter, and we need to adjust the IP address to the IP address of the synchronization server. So the synchronization server is an additional piece of software also included in the VPET tools, which will synchronize all the clients, so all tablets, and also the host. So you will see all updates made on the tablets also on the host. So you enter the IP address of the synchronization server. In our case, this is just IP address of that machine, because we will in a minute run the synchronization server on that machine. You can type ipconfig in the command prompt and see your own IP address, which you need to enter in the Unity application. Make sure they match, and yeah, that is the setup within the Unity host. Now let's go back to the folder we just downloaded from the GitHub repository, where we also had a subfolder containing the synchronization server. So we open the synchronization server folder, and we can also find the source code, but what is more interesting for us now is the Windows binary. There is a shortcut for the command prompt which we can open, from where we can then run the synchronization server. So double click on the command prompt, and you can run the sync server.executable here. If you run it without arguments, you will be prompted some help. You can see the commands that you can specify. For us, only the own IP is necessary here, since we are not using an NCAM camera tracking. If you forgot which IP address you used, you can simply type -h after the sync server executable, and you will receive a list of all available IP addresses of that computer. So now we enter syncserver.exe and own IP, and then we enter the IP address we chose, which should be the same one we just entered in the Unity host. We click enter, and now the synchronization server is running. We didn't use NCAM, so that will be stated there as well. We can go back to the Unity host application and run the scene. So after some further scene dressing and adding some lights and adjusting some rendering parameters, your scene might look like this on the host. To get the best rendering quality available on the host, verify that in the graphics emulation menu under Edit, no emulation is selected. Now let's go to the tablet and first install the VPET app from the App Store. We can directly open it there. From there, the camera needs to be accessed for ARKit, and then VPET tools on the tablet are running. On that configuration screen, we again need to enter the IP address of the synchronization server by just tapping into the IP address field. Here you can change the IP address and make sure that you deselect the load scene cache toggle, because this would load a demo scene, which we don't want to do currently. So we load the scene. This will take maybe a minute or so. Now that the scene is transferred, it can be explored on the client tablet by moving it. All changes to editable objects and lights made on the tablet are transferred and reflected directly in the host, as you can see here. Now the setup is ready. That is all I wanted to show you in this tutorial. Thank you.